Shalom, friends. This is Daniel with Bless Israel Network, and this is another episode of Eye on Israel. Do I have to remind you that the Jewish people are God's chosen people? I hope I don't, but if you don't know that, let me remind you they are. And that the Jewish people are central to God's plan for salvation for all of us, at least when it comes to Christians and Jews who believe in God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So we all believe that God is not finished with the Jewish people, that replacement theology is absolutely untrue and unscriptural, that the Jewish people and Israel are the apple of God's eye, and yet, in spite of that, look what's happened to the Jewish people throughout history. They have been history's doormat. They have been history's scapegoat. Suffice to say, there's been more persecution perpetrated against the Jewish people than any other people in history by far. Don't have to remind you about the Holocaust. We've talked about that before. But you know what? There's another side to this. When Israel was reborn in 1948, which really, in my mind, put us on the fast track for the last days, there's another side of Israel which you may not have thought about. Yes, indeed, the Jewish people have suffered. And I want to give you a little picture here. You know, there's two messiahs, okay? Many of us believe there are two messiahs. Yeshua ben Yosef, the suffering, hidden messiah. Yeshua ben David, which will be the returning, conquering Messiah. Well, I think it's safe to say that the Jewish people have had more than their fair share of suffering. I mean, even look at today's world. The Arabs hate them, the UN hates them, there's replacement theology that's rampant throughout the Christian world. So the Jewish people are still suffering. Could it be that there's a little image comparison here, that the Jewish people might be compared to the suffering Messiah that is one day going to bless the world? Well, guess what? The Jewish people, believe it or not, and the tiny nation of Israel are blessing the world now, in spite of the fact that they are suffering. Let me give you some examples. First off, let's talk some numbers. The entire population of the country of Israel is about the size of metropolitan Chicago. That puts it in perspective, right? Pretty small. In terms of geography, Israel is ranked number 147 out of the world's nations. Again, pretty small, right? And yet, let me give you some examples of how modern Israel is incredibly blessing the entire world. I'm going to show you some images of some products, most of which, at least, we're going to talk about are in technology, which is stuff that I would say the average person is pretty familiar with and takes for granted and uses routinely today. But you may not know that each of these products whose images I'm going to show you originated in Israel. Indeed. So hold on to your hats because you may be surprised. First off, you remember compact discs or CDs? Okay, well, a lot of people still use them. They listen to music on and so on and so forth. But they also used to be storage devices or storage systems. Well, until this came along. Yes, flash drives. Flash drives pretty much wiped out the compact disc industry. And guess where flash drives were invented? Indeed, here in Israel. That's item number one. Item number two, how about Windows operating systems? Yep, take a look at this. Now, granted, Windows has advanced since NT and XP and what have you, but nonetheless, those operating systems were invented here in Israel at Microsoft's facility. believe it or not. Take a look at this. Now that image may not look very familiar to you, okay? ICQ. But what is it? Are you familiar with instant messaging? Are you familiar with WhatsApp? Are you familiar with sending text messages, etc., etc.? Well, guess what? That technology was invented here in Israel. The original company was ICQ, and it was later purchased by AOL, which became AOL Instant Messaging, the world's first instant messaging system, and the original technology came from Israel. Now, everyone is using instant messaging, but little tiny Israel is where it all started. Take a look at this. Now, you may not recognize what that is, but that's a processor or a computer chip. That is kind of the brains, if you will, of most computers. And probably the most well-known brand name of computers in the world is made by Intel. And the most well-known Intel chip is the Pentium processor. And they've also had the Centrino. Well, guess where they were invented? You got it. Here in Israel at Intel's facility. Indeed. Hi, just a quick correction. I didn't mean computers, I meant computer processors. Sorry about that. Okay, how about this one? Yep, you saw a picture of a mobile phone. And believe it or not, mobile phone or cellular phone technology came from Israel's Motorola facility a number of years ago. Hard to believe, but yes, indeed, Israel invented cell phone technology. Amazon Kindle. It's owned by Oracle. They came here to Israel, wanted some new technology for an electronic book platform that they were going to release. The result is Amazon Kindle. Herzliya, which is right next to Tel Aviv, is where it was invented. I'm not finished, okay? How about digital printing? We almost all of us have computers. Most of us have printers, and you're able to connect your printer via cable to your computer, or if you have a Wi-Fi network, you can connect it wirelessly to your computer and print digital images right from your computer. The entire concept of being able to print a digital image off a computer originated in Israel by a company named Indigo. And a number of years ago, it was acquired by Hewlett-Packard, who has probably done more to promote the entire market of digital printing than anyone else. Not to say that there aren't a lot of others, there certainly are. I own one that's not made by HP, but nonetheless, the concept, the technology of digital printing, both consumer and commercial, originated in Israel. Do you play video games? Take a look at this. Okay, you may not recognize what that is, but in essence, if you own an Xbox, that's the guts of Xbox. It's made by a company called PrimeSense, and it is made here in Israel. And it is basically the core piece of technology for almost all video game manufacturing, especially and including Microsoft's Xbox, again, from Israel. Do you use voicemail? Guess where the technology came from? You guessed it, here in Israel. One more little item of technology. Which came from Israel, as if there isn't enough we've heard already, but how about the very first computer antivirus software? Indeed, from Israel. So that's a list of just some of the high-tech products that have originated in Israel. I'm going to read you off a short list of some other non-high-tech items that you're probably familiar with, but nonetheless, if you're not, these originated in Israel. How about the pill cam? What's the pill cam? It's about the size of like a capsule that you swallow, and it goes down into your gastrointestinal system and allows doctors to look and see what's going on in your system. It was manufactured by a company called Given, and that is here in Israel. Crib death. We know about crib death, the technology that has allowed people to keep a monitor system on the potential trauma that a sleeping baby might get into came from here in Israel. There's a special bandage when paramedics get to a scene, whether it's in the city or even in military operations, and it's a special type of emergency bandage which has revolutionized the ability to stop bleeding. And it's called the emergency bandage, and this came from Israel. How about superbugs? Okay, bugs that are antibiotic resistant. Well, it takes days to identify that. Israel came up with a technology which allows them to be identified within minutes, not days. Again, came from Israel. Israel also has the first gas turbine solar thermal power station. The first one. You know those little machines that you see on TV where they're shaving your legs and removing facial hair and so on and so forth? The very first one was called Epilady, and that came to market a number of years ago, and it was commercials everywhere, and there's all kinds of different takeoffs on it. Well, guess where Epilady was invented? Absolutely here in Israel. Okay? Those of you who are experiencing drought, and especially those of you that are in California, and we here in Israel are in drought conditions almost all the time, but you've probably seen farmland where they have those big, huge irrigation systems with 10-foot high wheels, and they cover large areas, and they wheel very slowly across crop areas, and they just spray water. Well, Israel came up with the drip irrigation system, and the drip irrigation system uses a fraction of the water. It's entirely efficient, and more crops and farms in California, which has experienced severe drought in the last few years, have been using the revolutionary Israeli-developed drip irrigation system. But this is where it came from. You like salad? You like tomatoes? Guess where cherry tomatoes came from? You guessed it. The tiniest tomato came from the world's, not quite, but almost the world's tiniest country. Cherry tomatoes came from Israel. So these are just some inventions that I wanted to share with you and give you an idea of how the world's most persecuted people, and literally practically the world's almost most hated nation, how is blessing the world. And let me give you one more statistic. The Jewish people comprise, what is the number? 0.2% of the world's population. And yet, if you've heard of the Nobel Prize, named after Alfred Nobel, that was first awarded in 1901. Of all the Nobel Prize winners, people of Jewish descent have won 22%, have been awarded 22% of all Nobel Prizes. That's a little more than 1 in 5, almost 1 in 4. And yet the Jewish people make up 0.2% of the world's population. Look, am I beating my chest here? No. I'm simply trying to point out to you that the people and the nation that has been cursed, that is hated, that is despised. Gee, does that sound familiar about how people treated our Messiah? Cursed, despised, hated. Well, guess what? This tiny nation and these very persecuted people are blessing each and every one of you on a daily basis. Do you think it's time that maybe you might pray about blessing Israel back? We moved to Israel because we felt this is where God called us to move to. We started Bless Israel Network and Revelation to the Nations because we want to bring the wonderful people here in Israel to your computer, to your doorstep, to give you a chance to bless them so more of them will help bring Jews to faith here in Israel. That's the whole point of our ministry, is to help you play a role in bringing Jews to faith in Israel. Well, Israel has done more than its fair share, and the Jewish people have done more than its fair share to bless the rest of the world with all of these incredible things, in spite of being hated so much, in spite of being persecuted so much. Please, I ask you to pray. Pray about blessing Israel. And if these messages that we provide you really bless you, we would ask you to pray about going to our website, blessisraelnetwork.com, and blessing us. We would be so appreciative. And hopefully we'll see you the next time we come to the States. Right now we're gearing up for another trip, and we will be coming to the U.S. soon. But in the meantime, I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope this message has been informative and a blessing to you, and we hope to hear from you. May God bless you from Israel. Shalom.